All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today for the Wealth Builders Bootcamp. This is going to be a mini version of our Wealth Builders Summit coming up on October 5th and 6th. So I hope everyone has already had a chance to get their tickets. Today, we got several speakers with us that's going to be speaking on a lot of the different topics that we'll be hitting on at the Wealth Builders Summit. We want to go ahead. We don't want to waste any time whatsoever. So we want to go ahead and get into it. Our first speaker today, he is an independent financial advisor dedicated to helping people confidently achieve their financial goals. After years of serving some of America's wealthiest family, he left the big time to help start My Money Coach. So now he's helping people just like you. We want to welcome him with a real warm welcome as we can on the webinar, Mr. Mike Ross.
Yeah, thanks so much, and welcome everyone. Thanks for making some time to come here today, and hope to see you at the Wealth Builders Conference next week. My name is Mike Ross. I am a certified financial planner. I've been doing this almost 20 years and started my own firm about 4 years ago. And the workshop that I'm going to be hosting there is going to be timing and selection of stocks and bonds. A lot of people know that stocks and bonds have historically been a great tool to build wealth. But I get a lot of questions from clients and acquaintances, and really anybody who finds out I'm a financial advisor about, when should I buy this stock? What stock should I buy? And I think a lot of times the issue is that people are kind of asking the wrong question, and that's really what I want to talk about in the presentation at the summit, as well as today, right? So when it comes to timing and selection of stocks and bonds, one of the first things that people are usually wondering is, when should I invest, right? We look at the market today, we see news articles every day about the market being in free fall and the doom and gloom. But the reality is the time to invest is really always now if you're looking to build long-term wealth, right? So what I've seen over my years of working in this industry is often that paralysis by analysis, right? You see the headlines, the things that are designed to really create fear and generate clicks for marketing and media companies, right? And what ends up happening is I've seen people sitting on the sidelines with millions of dollars and not investing due to fear. So really my approach in my practice, as well as what I try to coach people and guide people, is to really take that holistic approach and really look at the timing is always now, right? You should always be an investor when there is money that is designated for investing. So one of the things that I would look to really work through is kind of finding out, well, if the timing is always now, how do we do things like manage risk, right? And that's one of the big topics that we'll be talking about is asset allocation, right? Where say you have $1,000 to invest, a lot of people are like, well, what do we do with it? Do we invest it in stocks? Do we invest it in bonds? And the answer is usually probably a little bit of both, depending on what you are trying to accomplish, right? If you're trying to save a house and buy a house in 3 to 5 years, it's going to be very different from, say, saving for retirement 20 years in the future. So it really kind of comes back to goals. But once you have the goals and the desire to invest for a specific purpose, right? Whether it's a large purchase, retirement, kingdom work, legacy goals, that's really where it comes time to, okay, well, let's think about what we actually want to invest in. So knowing that the timing is always right, because delaying, if you look at the data historically, trying to time markets is usually a losing game, right? Where there was a study that was done that shows about 90% of people who try to time the market, right, to saying, hey, I don't think the market's right, so I'm going to wait, or I'm going to sell now, or I'm going to try to buy now and take advantage of that. 90% of people who do that fail to beat the market, right? And the reason for that, in my personal opinion, has been the evolution of technology, right? So if you can kind of put on your time traveling hat and think back to, say the 60s or 70s, right, before the invention of the internet and connectivity of humans all across the world, really, there might be some kind of material advantage where if I wanted to analyze, say, 100 different companies and look at those stocks versus someone down the street who maybe only looks at 10 companies, right? I may be able to find some kind of material advantage through work and effort. And then came the internet, and that kind of blew all of that up, right? Now you have armies of supercomputers processing data the second any company releases any kind of public data. And they're trading on it faster than any of us can as individual investors or even as financial advisors, right? So my whole philosophy is, rather than thinking about selecting any individual stocks and bonds, which you can do for people who enjoy that, it really comes down to the concept of diversification, right? Where you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. What you want to do is really spread that across by owning as much as you can. And the way that works for me within my firm, as well as what I give advice to people who maybe are not clients, but just want advice on how to invest on their own because they're not ready to work with someone, is to really look to something called an index fund, right? Which is an index fund is essentially saying, instead of picking and choose, hey, I just want to buy Apple, or I just want to buy Google, or some other biotech company, it's to look at the market as a whole and say, you know what? I believe that capitalism is going to work for us. I don't want to take the risk of buying a company that may look good on paper, but doesn't pan out that way. Just in my short life of 40 years, I've seen it numerous times, right? Companies like Enron, WorldCom, that everybody looks at and says, hey, this is a great investment, and they're only an accounting scandal away from being completely worthless. So my whole approach is really, how do we take that risk of an individual company going out of business and take that risk off the table, right? We may not get those catastrophic returns up or down, right? Where it kind of crashes if the company goes out of business. And we may not have the upside of, say, just buying Tesla, 5-10 years ago and only owning Tesla. However, the same way something goes up, it can come down, and that concentration risk is real. So the idea of indexing is, okay, say there's 5,000 companies in the United States. If we want to participate in the US stock market, let's just buy all 5,000 companies. Now, as a small investor who maybe only has a couple of $1,000s to invest, you can't buy a share of all 5,000 companies. But what you can do is buy an index fund that pools all investor funds together in order to acquire that same exposure, right? So instead of having one share of everything, you may have a really small fraction of a share, but you still have exposure to all of those companies. And if you can imagine in a practical sense, right, where let's say you had $10,000 to invest and you said, hey, I want to buy 10 different companies, right? So you put $1,000 in each of these 10 companies. If one of those goes out of business, that's a 10% loss that you'll never recover, right? The company goes out of business. Now, if you were to invest that same $10,000 in a broad market index of all 5,000 companies in the United States, if one of those companies goes out of business, you don't even notice because it's such a small piece of it. And that's really where the discipline comes in. So when it comes to stock selection, I am not a believer, at least with the broad portion of your portfolio, right? Most of the things that you want to invest, unless you're really into it and really love that, I tell people, find something that is low cost, because that's some of the things we can control, right? We can't control what the market's going to do. Only God knows the future. As smart as we may be, as much education as we may have, one thing I believe to my core, only God knows the future. It's going to be his will. So I'm very much a believer in investing very broadly, spreading the risk across everything, and then really coming down to how much should I have in stocks as a whole? How much should I have in bonds as a whole? And then essentially, once you figure that portion of the question out, is how do I put together a high quality, low cost, efficient way of gaining access to those particular components that belong in a portfolio, right? So index funds are a great way to do that. That is essentially how I will do it within my firm, right? Is to combine those for specific things. You can dial that in a little bit depending on things like risk tolerance. I know one of the other presentations, workshops earlier in the event is going to be on behavioral finance. And I hope that my section will build off of that, right? Where that's really kind of looking at the behavioral elements of finance. And then this is coming into, okay, we've kind of got an understanding of how behavioral finance works. How do we apply that, right? How do we look into making those decisions about when we invest, when we don't invest, and what we choose to invest in? And I think that index funds are really a great way to do that. Companies like Vanguard really started that, almost 50 years ago. And there's a lot of other companies that have kind of copycatted that, right? So from that standpoint, kind of in the larger presentation, we'll kind of go into what makes those components, go a little bit more in detail about stocks, bonds, but ultimately coming in at a low cost is something that really anyone can do. And then really we'll go into more detail about what it means on an ongoing basis, right? Because it's really easy to come in and say, okay, I've got X amount of dollars that I want to invest for Y amount of years, right? So you come up with something, you invest in that. Well, anybody who's followed the market for any amount of time should know that the market does this, right? It's up, it's down. Sometimes it seems very rational and logical for why. Sometimes it seems completely irrational. But I want to get a little bit deeper into what you actually do after that, right? So say you come together and you build a portfolio that's an appropriate mix of stocks and bonds. One of the things that I do as a financial advisor, which I think investors and self-directed investors are perfectly capable of learning how to do themselves, is the ongoing maintenance. Things like rebalancing, reallocating when goals or circumstances change. And in the presentation, I'll get into a lot more data and have kind of a presentation behind that to kind of help assist. But that's really what my focus is going to be during the workshop at the event. And I hope to see a lot of you there and look forward to your questions and hopefully helping everybody kind of come up with something and get a little more understanding of how they should be going about investing in a portfolio of stocks and bonds.
Well, thank you so much for that, Mike. We do have a question for you. This is from Miss Audrey Daniels. She said, what is the difference between index funds and a broad company index fund?
Yeah. So the best way to think of what an index fund is, right, is back in the day, there were actively managed funds. And what that means is someone like me or another professional money manager, right, is making decisions. So they might have a fund that pools investor funds together and then maybe is investing in 5 companies, 10 companies, and they're essentially trying to do security selection and market timing. And they call those actively managed funds, right? So what's happening under the hood is a manager is making active changes. The problem with a lot of actively managed funds is the fee structure, right? We know that we can't control the future. Only God can control the future. However, we can control what we do, right? Our behavior, our actions, and most importantly, what we pay, right? That's something that an actively managed fund, you look out there, there are hundreds to thousands of them, and you typically see expense ratios of 1% or higher, right? And what that means ultimately is, let's say the market as a whole returns 8% for the year. If you're paying a 1% fee for an actively managed fund to hire a manager to try to beat the market, if they're charging a 1% fee, even if they got an 8.5% return, when you take out their fee, you've only made 7.5%. So they've actually underperformed the market on a fee adjusted basis. What index funds do is they kind of take that whole idea of trying to time the market and pick the winners while avoiding the losers and just throw that out the window. And they say, you know what, the market as a whole is going to get me there if I participate. So let's participate at a really low cost. So instead of spending 1% per year, you might only be paying 5 basis points, which is 0.5 of a percentage, right? So instead of having to earn 9% in that example for the manager to break even with the market, you're not going to beat the market because an index fund is just replicating it, right? So the S&P 500 is a very commonly held index. Standard & Poor's puts it out there, and it's the 500 largest companies in America. And what an index fund says is, instead of us trying to beat that by picking some winners, avoiding some losers, we're just going to buy those 500 companies and say, you know what, if the market returns 8%, we're going to get 8%. So we're going to get as much participation as we can, but completely take that piece of the equation out of there, which is that manager fee.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today. And if you have not done so, I suggest everybody go over to the WBS.org. We already put it in the chat for you, and go ahead and get those tickets so you can be a part and get a lot more information just like this from Mr. Ross. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and look forward to seeing everybody next week.
So joining us next, he is founder and president of Marketplace Leader Ministries. He's authored over 21 books. He's also hailed as a speaker, a consultant, and a recognized authority in the role that faith and ethics play in the marketplace. Joining us to tell us a little bit more about cryptocurrency, Mr. Oz Hillman.
Thank you, KC. Thank you, everybody. It's great to be on this with all of you, and I hope that you'll be with us next week. It should be a really great place to really add to your knowledge of investing and just the wealth transfer that we all believe God is doing. But next week, I'm going to be talking about a number of things rooted in the crypto world, but I'll begin by sharing some of the basics that I think everyone needs to do first before they even look at risk capital. And crypto is the wild, wild west today. And even so, you can do well, but there's a lot of risk out there in the market that we're in today. But we'll look at that and understand how the future of banking is really changing incredibly. In fact, I was just listening to a presentation in Abu Dhabi that talked about the fact that America is 10 years behind in the digital wallet area and the way that money is being managed. And the whole world is changing. And we're going to look at some of the things that are changing and how you can benefit from those changes. And, fintech, which means financial technology, is really impacting the financial arenas in a great way. And one of the things we're noticing in the last year is how crypto and Bitcoin has gone down every time NASDAQ has gone down. Why is that? Well, it's because crypto is now becoming institutionalized and is beginning to be tied in the portfolios of investors. And that means that it's acting like a true investment, but it's a little bit different in the nature of it. And we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be talking about the impact digital wallets are having on our society. You may not even know what a digital wallet is, but we're going to unpack that for you and help you get a better understanding of this basic area so that you can benefit from it. Albert Einstein said years ago that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And what a profound statement. But if you think about compound interest, it is an amazing thing. If you had $500 and you put it into something that would pay you 3% a week, and you did that over 5 years and never put any more money in that account, you would have over $2 million. That's compound interest. But where can you find that in today's marketplace? Well, I'm going to share with you a company that's been around going on 4 years now that's paying out an average of 3% a week, and it has less volatility than direct trading. And it's an exciting company. And so you'll want to come to learn more about that and to be able to take advantage of that yourself. And so what we have done is we formed an investment community encouraging believers to really grow in this area and learn about crypto and learn about companies that are worthy of our participation. And so I hope that you'll come out for that. I believe you'll not only get a lot of knowledge at this event, but you'll have tangible places you can earn money by investing. So I look forward to being with you guys.
Well, thank you so much. Now, one quick question. How does someone get started in cryptocurrency investing? And what are some of the safer ones to kind of start with?
Well, it all depends on your risk tolerance. I think that there are certain things that we're going to talk about, about 5 things you want to do before you ever get into crypto, because crypto, as you know, just It was about 5 years ago that it was at $68,000, and now it's under 20,000. So a lot of people took big hits in trading individual crypto and mining. And so one of the things I like to do is limit risk. And so I'm going to share some platforms that were too risky, that were scams. But I'm also going to share one platform that's going on 4 years that's never missed a payout. And they have consistently paid out 2 to 4% a week. And that's 15 to 17% a month. Now, that's a pretty aggressive opportunity, and yet it has less risk than trading individual crypto. And so we're going to unpack that and really go into detail about that company at the event.
All right. Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for this information. And we cannot wait to see you at the Wealth Builder Summit. I
look forward to being with you guys.
And once again, for everyone that's joining now, if you have not had a chance to do so, go to thewbs.org and hurry up and register, because we only have so many seats available to hear all of these awesome guys speak. Once again, that's the wbs.org. I suggest you get registered. Coming up next, he is an 18-year veteran of the franchising world, but his career began with a 9-year tenure with Gateway Computers. He went all in with his first franchise, Liberty Tax Service, which I'm sure everyone has heard of. And he's been very, very successful in International Franchisee of the Year by the International Franchise Association. Everyone, please welcome Mr. Andy Banker.
All right. How's everybody doing today? I can hear you all applauding virtually. Yeah, my name's Andy Banker. I have been in the franchise world for almost 20 years. I live in Kansas City. And, kind of going back to kind of where I came from, I worked at a company called Gateway Computers. And if you guys remember, that was a great computer company back in the 1900s. And I worked there, and it was a rocket ship to the moon. I did the whole corporate ladder thing, got the MBA, got promotions, met my wife there. And it was really going great until the tech bubble popped. So I went from having a great job to literally all my eggs in that basket. And it was a rocket ship to the moon, and it was a roller coaster ride to the bottom. So I was miserable. I wanted out of corporate America, and I had a horrible boss. And I'm a positive guy, but I just was not happy. So I knew I wanted to start my own business. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So franchising made sense for me. So franchising, as you might know, is a system of doing business. The franchisor created a system over time. They've failed, they've succeeded, but eventually they put it all together and they have a great business model for you. So I started looking into franchising, and I kind of was mentored by my sister-in-law's dad, who at the time owned 14 McDonald's. Now he's retired, but so he was kind of a good guy to take me under his wing. And I looked into franchising, and I found the company that I decided to buy the franchise is called Liberty Tax Service. So you guys have seen us out there waving at you, dressed like the Statue of Liberty. So I started with one location here in Kansas City in 2005. And then I got another one. Then a few years later, I bought all of El Paso, Texas. Then a few years later, I bought all half of Dallas, and then all of Nashville. Then a few years after that, all of Tulsa. So I ended up going from one unit to over 60 plus locations in 18 years. We also had within the same umbrella, Siempre Tax Plus, which was a Hispanic brand, 360 Accounting, which was a business brand. And I'll tell you guys, franchising changed my life. I like working on the business, not in the business. I also like the flexible time. I'm the dad that gets to go to school, pick up the kiddos. I'm the dad that gets to coach baseball, football, or whatever. Got a lot of time. So I'm really looking forward to the summit. I want to basically give you guys a process. If you're miserable at your job, or not necessarily miserable, but you know what, I kind of want to go find a business and I don't know how to go about it. We're going to talk about a specific process to go through to see if franchising is right for you. So just some character. I'm also going to talk about characteristics of what it takes to be successful. You know, do you have a positive attitude? You know, are you a system follower? So a franchise, as I mentioned, system of doing business. And if you're going to do your own thing, do not buy a franchise. A franchisor tells you what to do. They're looking for good folks to execute their business model. And, you know, so be a system follower. Are you coachable? You know, are you going to be able to say, yeah, I am open-minded. Here's the business model. I want to learn it. And if I'm not doing right, you know, are you open to feedback? Are you willing to work hard? You know, owning a business is not easy, but it is something you can do. I promise you, it's something you can do if you get started. Hard work is something I think you guys are all out there. You're willing to work hard. You know, you're not going to get rich overnight, but if you start with a great business model and follow their processes, follow their system, you're more apt to be successful. But it's going to take hard work. And then finally, do you have people skills? You know, we're going to talk a lot about that. You know, can you manage and motivate people? The franchisors mainly want CEOs. They want to look for CEOs who can operate their business model. So do you have that CEO mindset? So we'll talk about, you know, what does it take to be, what are the intangibles it takes to be a franchisee at the summit next week? We're going to talk about fear and anxiety. So I was a big part of whether or not you do a business is fear and anxiety and your way to manage that. I quit my job. I did not get downsized, unfortunately. Everyone else did. I didn't get a severance. I wanted one, but I quit. And my wife was 7.5 months pregnant. And I look back and I can't even believe I did it. So you're going to have to be courageous as well. We'll talk about that. But most of all, I want to give you the summit's over. It's next Monday. What are you going to do right now to find a franchise? So now, I sold my business 2 years ago. So I'll always be an investor in franchises in some way, shape, or form. But I sold my entity a couple of years ago. And I want to give you guys a process to help you say, hey, is franchising right for me? And if so, what franchise is right for me? So now I'm with a company called FranChoice. FranChoice is a group of franchise consultants. And so the next step for you that I'll challenge you with, if you're interested, is get on my calendar. So I want to put you through what I call a franchise consultation, and I pick your brain. What do you want to do? What don't you want to do? What is your budget? How much do you need? You know, let's talk about funding. Let's talk about due diligence to make sure that these franchises are for real. They're going to share with us numbers. Are they for real? How do you know? And, you know, I love helping people at a crossroads find the right fit, not including anything important like God or family. This is why I was put on the earth, to help folks get out of the rat race. And so let's say we go through a consultation. I come up with some options for you to investigate with my help. Let's say you buy one of them. They pay me. So FranChoice has been around 20 years. I've been doing this 6 years now, by the way. And so if you buy a franchise, they pay me. So it's no risk other than time, which I know is a factor. But I want to give you real world, what is the next step? Step 1, step 2, step 3. How do you investigate franchises? How are we going to fund this thing? How do you know if it's right for you? And that's really what I want to do at this summit coming up, is to help folks really look into franchising, see if it's for them, and then go out and find the right fit. There's 4,000 franchises, and my company pre-screened several hundred of them. We're in 75 different sectors. And I'm the dude that goes to franchise shows. I'm on webinars and Zooms learning about new franchises. I always say I am a franchise nerd. I love to learn about franchises. In real life, I'm not a nerd. In real life, I'm really cool. But when it comes to franchising, I'm a nerd. So I would love to help you guys. I cannot wait to be in front of the group next week. I just looking at the speakers, you know, investing and crypto, I'm super pumped about it as well, to not only be one of the speakers, but a participant as well. So I'll be ready to roll next week.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us today. We do have a question for you coming from Facebook. They're saying, do you need previous business experience to become a franchise owner?
Ooh, that's why I love franchising, because the answer is no. I did not have any business experience other than, you know, corporate America, which I think is a good training ground. I've got a marketing sales background, a training background. You know, you need to manage people. You know, I really like semi-absentee models, manage the manager. In some cases, keep your day job as well and do something on the side. But you don't have to have business experience, but you got to have a little hustle in you. You got to work hard. You got to be coachable, as I mentioned. Again, we'll talk about that more next week. But if you can come in with a blank slate, ready to learn, a franchise is a partnership. Again, they have the system of doing business. You provide the execution. So really, it's a matter of starting, getting a baseline of performance, and then from there, continuous improvement. And it's very, very doable. Good question.
Well, Andy, thank you so much. And once again, we can't wait to see you at the Wealth Builder Summit coming up October 5th and 6th. The link is right there in the chat. So anyone wants to get over there and get registered now, I suggest you do so because tickets are definitely running out. And thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to it.
Coming up next, he is a seasoned real estate investor, realtor, and certified real estate appraiser with over 20 years experience. If everyone would help me welcome Mr. Eric Etheridge.
Hey, hello. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited about what's happening. I'm just listening to these speakers, and it's like a wealth of knowledge in this wealth building summit. There's just a lot of wealth just flying around, and I know it's going to be great. Without belittling the point, as I'm listening to Mike and I was listening to Andy, what you'll find out is that some of the same principles will apply in real estate. And my focus next week will be on real estate and real estate investing, as coupled with even Darren Collins, and he's going to talk about some of the risk and benefits for real estate. But I'm just going to talk about just investing in real estate in general, and really setting up your team and some different strategies and principles that will help you protect from any of the downfalls, because that's I believe that's important. If you do have a system in place, if you do have a process in place, and you do have a great team, you know, it can eliminate a lot of mistakes that people make as it relates to real estate investing. And I believe that that's important, and that's been one of the things that I've learned over the years. It's about having the right team, having the right information, and making the right decision, because it's going to really make a difference. And so one of the things that people are asking right now, and I get, you know, I get it and I understand, is that when we look at, you know, really what's happening now, interest rates are rising, the feds are raising the interest rate. Is this a good time to invest in real estate? And real estate is just like any other market. You can make money of going when the market's going up and going down. You make money in real estate as you go in. And the thing about it is that, yes, to answer the question, yes, it's the right time, because we're coming into a market correction. And if you look at the statistics, you will begin to see that some of the values of homes are actually going down, which means that now you can get them at as I call, almost like a discounted rate. But one of the things is that when you go to purchase real estate, you have to ask yourself this question: what is your strategy? Are you buying real estate as a short-term investment or a long-term investment? And there are different strategies. And what I mean by short-term investment, are you purchasing real estate to flip? You know, that has been popular over the past couple of years since the values were going up in a lot of TV shows that you see you know, about flipping. You know, that's your short term. Are you going to be in less than a year? Are you going to buy? Are you going to rehab, then resell it? Or there's something we call wholesale investment, and that's when you have some investors who will actually go purchase the property, and then they will sell it to investors, and we'll talk more about that next week. There's going to be someone who talks about Airbnb. Some people will actually have their property, they will rent it out for a short term, whether it be a weekend, or something of that, maybe 2 weeks. You may have a vacation home. These are what we call your short-term investments. They're not long-term. Well, when we start getting into long-term, we may start talking about rental. You know, you have a lease that runs a year. Some lease may go 2 years. Are you going to buy and hold? You know, what's your position or what's your strategy? So when we talk about investing, you have to understand what your strategy is, and you have to have a plan. And they say the 7 P's. Prior proper planning prevents a, I don't want to say the other word that I learned, but it prevents a poor performance. Let's just say it that way. And so, you have to have a plan going into investment so that you can hedge your position and that you can make the right decision. The other thing that we're going to talk about is how are you going to finance it? There's several different ways to finance real estate, and there's creative financing, but you have to also make this decision and have to think about this going into your investment. Are you going to use your cash? Are you going to leverage another investment to purchase this property? Are you going to use a construction loan? And are you going to use a hard money loan? Hard money loan meaning that you go get a private investor to give you the finances or give you the funding to purchase this property, but they have certain terms. The terms that they have typically may be a little bit more aggressive than your typical bank. So you have to look at the terms and understand not only the interest rates, but the time frame and what happens if you go past the allotted time frame. So you have to look at those things. We talk about construction loan. You will leverage the equity in your property to maybe do the repairs and so on and so forth. So we'll talk about some of these things next week, because this is very important, because this is part of your planning process that you have to think about, prior to going into real estate. So these are very, very, very important. The other thing is, one of the things that I see that a lot of investors, or one of the mistakes that I see that they make is they're not, as I call, counting the full cost. And what I'm talking about is that as you get into investment, what are you going to do about capital gains? Sometimes when we go and look at houses, I see people and said, I'm gonna buy this house for $150,000 and I'm going to, resell it for $350,000 and I'm good. Well, and when you start doing the numbers, it'll cost you another $150,000 to do the repairs, because you're going to add a second level. And then in addition to that, you have the holding costs, you have the miscellaneous costs, and then you may have the cost of reselling it, the cost that you have to pay the realtor. But then after all that is said and done, people forget about the capital gains tax that you have to pay on your investment from flipping a property. And so, that's very important. So what I always tell people, when I always tell investors, you have to think backwards, and you have to think about some of these miscellaneous things, or some of these things that people typically don't think about prior to going into that investment, so that at the end of the project, you're not in the red. You're like, oh my God, I thought I was going to have X amount of dollars, but then when it's all said and done, you either break even, or you're pouring out money from your own pocket, and you're like, oh my God, what in the world happened? How did I get to this point? So having a plan and properly executing is very important. But in addition to that, what is also important is who is on your team. You have to have a good team of people to make this investment work, to be profitable. And so one of the first things that's important, as I talked about capital gains tax, you have to have a good accountant. So you have to be able to have someone that you can talk to, going into this project to figure out what I'm going to do. Once I sell this, am I going to put it in a 1031 tax exchange, which means that I'm now going to take the money that I have, I'm going to roll it into a 1031 tax exchange, where I can now take this money to buy another property, which will enhance put off my capital gains taxes. I mean, that may be a tax strategy that you and your accountant talk about, but it's important to have an accountant on your team so that you know what to do or know how to handle the capital gains after you come out of, say, flipping a property. When we're talking about renting the property, that may be a little different. But the thing is, when we're talking about renting a property, as you go on in terms of long-term investments, What are you going to do about depreciation? What happens when you do go to sell? How are you going to handle that? So you have to have a strategy that goes forward. In addition to rental, how are you going to handle the repairs going forward? Because how many of you know that the air condition over a period of time may go out? You may have to buy a new refrigerator. You may have to buy a water heater. You may have to buy a new stove. These things, they don't last forever. So you have to have a plan to make sure that when the time comes that you have the allotted finances that are put aside, so that when you have to purchase these things, you have the money. In addition to that, you may say, well, I'm not going to be a property manager, but you have to hire a property manager. So when we're talking about your plan, you must incorporate that in your plan so that you can have the proper person on your team. Because as we talk about property manager, I mean, your property manager is going to be that person that watches over your property. If you're not going to be that landlord, you're going to turn it over to someone else. So you want to make sure that the person that you turn it over to is going to do right by you. They're going to do right by your property. They're going to take care of it. They're going to have proper screening for tenants. I mean, all these things are very important, because if you make a misstep, it can cost you in the long run. So having the correct property manager is important. In addition to that, I tell you, one of the most important pieces of this thing is having the right general contractor. Because when you purchase a property, especially if you're going to flip, or if you're going to purchase a rental property, how many know that when you purchase a property, it may or may not be in the best condition. So there's going to have to be repairs that need to be made. So you're going to have a good general contractor that comes in that will give you an estimate prior to you making or purchasing the property, because this is part of your plan. Because you think you're going into a project and you look at it and say, oh, it's going to only cost me $50,000 to do this thing. But then then you purchase the property and the general contractor comes in and tell you, no, it's not going to cost $50,000. It's going to cost $100,000. And now you're in a tough position. You'll be like, oh my God, I purchased this thing too high. So, having a general contractor, someone that you can call, someone who can give you good advice as it relates to the recommended repairs, as it relates to how long the project is going to take. All these things are very important. In addition to that, you always have on your team, your general contractor will have their team. They will have the list of people that they work with. They will have their plumber. They will have their heating and air guy. They will have their roofer and things of that nature. But I also like to have my own. I believe that it's very important that you still have your own plumber, that you still have your own heating and air guy, that you still have your own roofer, that you have your landscaper. You have your team, and it's not just to have one team. I believe in have multiple teams, because sometimes your guy may be on another project and they may not be able to get to you in time. You have to have a backup plan. I believe in having backup plans. So your team is very important, and having the right team can be the difference between you making a profit or you losing money. And so that's going to be very important. And I'm going to talk about some of the people that need to be on your team so that you can properly position yourself so that you can prosper at the end of the project. That's a lot of P's, but it's important so that you can be in a good position and you can hedge your position and make an intelligent decision about investing in property. One of the other things I want to talk about, because I am an investor, a realtor, and an appraiser, one of the things I found out very early is that you have to understand what the property is worth, which is what we call ARV, after rehab value. You have to understand what the value of this property will be after you have finished the project, one, or what is the rental rate after you finish this, after you finish your rehab, because that's going to be important, because that's going to tell you exactly where you need to purchase the property at, because and what I found out was this, is that, you have your realtors, and your realtor will tell you one thing, but you have to understand that the realtor is actually forecasting. And sometimes the realtor can be off. And so that's why I believe in actually having an appraiser on your team so that they can say, yeah, I hear what the realtor is saying, and that may be the case, but historically, this is what the value is, and this is what the comparable properties in the area are saying. This is what the comparable rentals are saying. Because the realtor, they're in there to sell, and I'm a realtor, we're in there to sell. We're going to sell, and we're going to paint this great scenario. We say, yeah, we can get this, and we're going to push to get this and get that, and that may be good because that's what you want. But at the same time, you want a more realistic value, especially when it comes into investment, so that you're not getting too aggressive or getting too far into your forecast to where it's not realistic in terms of what you can get your return or what return on your investment that you can get. So these things are very important, and these are some of the things that I'm going to talk about next week. I'm going to kind of give you almost, I won't say not necessarily a step by step, but I want to give you some practical principles, but yet also give you some things to think about so that you will have everything in place so that when it's time for you to go and invest, it can cut down on your possible losses. In addition to that, we're going to talk about some other things about doing your due diligence, which is very important. As my mentor said, when I first got into real estate, he says, in God we trust and everybody else we verify. So the thing is that you're going to have to do your own due diligence and be knowledgeable about your own project and not just relying on your people, but make sure that the information that you're receiving is verifiable so that you can make that intelligent investment. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about, and some of the things that I think that you'll be able to put in place, and some things that you begin to, when you leave the summit, that you'll be able to not only put in place, but some things that you can begin to execute to move forward into purchasing property.
Eric, thank you so much for that. We do have a question for you real quick. This is coming from Ms. Strickland. She says, what are your thoughts about investing in real estate investment firms where you pick out homes you want to put a small stake in? Whatever percentage you put into it is the percentage you get out of it with no liability or maintenance on your end.
Well, the thing is that that's something that you have to read the fine print. You have to read the fine print. You have to know what you're getting into. I mean, when you say that, for me, it all depends. It all depends upon the investment, I guess, the firm, and it all depends upon what they're promising or what your liability is. There's still a liability. You have to look at their success rate, before you step into something like that, because and look at your risks. What are some of the risks for you to do that? I mean, and there could be a plethora of things, especially there's no guarantee in real estate and right now we're in a position where the market goes up and the market goes down. And so, what happens if you get caught in a position where you're thinking that I invest in this particular firm and I make this type of investment and it's supposed, it's going up, but then what happens when the value goes down? What is my out? What are my risks? Because we're in a position now to where we're coming into a market correction in real estate. I mean, that's just the real, because of the interest rates. Supply of goods are going up, and as well as the supply in real estate, while there are builders who are still building, you still have the demand that because of the interest rates, they're now going down. So the thing is that what happens in that situation, or what are their contingency plans if the real estate market, if the value goes down, if the value goes down? Those are some of the questions that I ask. And so, it all depends. Right now, investing like that, to me, you have to just look at the risk.
Well, once again, Eric, thank you so much. And we cannot wait to hear more of your talk live at the Wealth Builders Summit, October 5th and 6th. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have not had a chance, please click the link now and get registered. It is so important to be in this room and hear from these speakers and really, really gain this knowledge about generational wealth. Coming up next, he's managed over $1.5 billion in assets, and he works with one of the top wealth investing companies. And he's also personally helped me with my own wealth investment strategy. So I know exactly what he's capable of. Joining us right now, Mr. Don Wells.
My good friend Kevin, it's so good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Please forgive my ball cap. I am having a travel day, so I had to stop and take out time, but I am very excited to be here. The common denominator in all of this as you listen, and I know most of these guys, is they have done this and they have built systems that help other people accomplish the same thing. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not buy my book. They've built systems, and books are good. There's nothing against that. Some of them have written some great books, and I recommend them. But the great thing that you hear about this that we're excited about, because people ask me, what makes this different? Well, there's a lot of great wealth building things that are available to us today. There's a lot of great conferences, but what I love about this and what we've done is we've taken guys that have done this, who are proven, who have done this over and over, built systems, and they're really passionate about helping people. So I'm so excited to learn. I always learn from these. I always listen from each of these guys, because everybody has their particular area. And what I love about what we see with this is these are guys that stay in their lanes. If I get into the real estate, I'm going to see Eric or Darren or one of these guys that have done it. And so it's interesting that we've assembled these guys. They've got their lanes, they've built it. So we're going to learn a lot from each other. Those that are coming, it will prove to be a great catapult in people's life that want to build wealth, that want to build income, that want to grow. There's a lot that goes with that. I came out of the market, as you know. I spent years managing people's money, high net worth. So I did a lot of financial planning, complex planning. It gave me exposure. That's why I mentioned that and tell people I gained a lot of exposure being able to deal with people that had complex issues. Money brings problems. It brings challenges. It brings things that you have to deal with. And so we have to learn how to manage that and manage it wisely. A particular interest for me and an area of study that I have spent some time academically is behavioral economics, which is what I'll be talking about a good bit during the conference. Investing, most people have at least some level of understanding, and you got stocks, bonds, you've got to spread your risk. There's some basics that we know. You've got to buy low, sell high. But what many times people are not aware of, they don't know, is the behavioral economics behind that. And behavioral economics is really, as it would sound, it's the merger of two professional things that come together, such as finance and psychology, the economics, and it really studies the effect of the psychological, cognitive factors on how we as individuals, the decisions of individuals and institutions vary based on our background and what we've been exposed to. In other words, the way we say it is you have biases that you bring to your decision-making process. And we have that with all of life, but it really plays out when you talk about investing, because how we grow up, our parents, our grandparents, the economy we grow up in, the circumstances we grow up in affect us and help develop certain biases that we may not be aware of. And so part of what we do is help people understand those biases. It's not that we get rid of them. It's not that we go, yep, you're going to get rid of all these biases, you won't have them anymore. It's that being aware of them helps you to be a better investor. One of them that we deal and identify with as an example, I'll give you a couple of quick examples, is loss aversion. Loss aversion is when somebody is more interested in avoiding loss than they are acquiring gains. So their focus becomes avoiding loss and instead of acquiring gains. Well, nobody wants to lose money. That's not anybody's agenda, but loss is a part of the overall process. Anybody that tells you they're never going to lose any money, you need to run quick, fast, and in a hurry, because they're probably selling something that you don't want to buy. It's part of the game and managing and mitigating risk. And we're going to have people there that will give us a deeper understanding of that when we're looking at different things. But understanding that loss is a part of it helps you to manage your long-term goals better. Probably one of the greatest examples that I often give people when you talk about biases. What biases do we have? Well, everybody knows you got to buy low and sell high, right? That's how you make money. You buy a pencil for $2, you got to sell it for more than $2 to make money. What part of what we see, and I've seen through the years, and it's really heartbreaking, is you'll see people who have been investing, they're smart, they understand, but let's say they're funding their 401k and they're doing that on a monthly basis and funding their 401k, and the market's up and things are going good. They like where it's at. They look at it and they go, wow, it's $50,000. I'm making money. I'm moving forward. And then we may have a market correction, and we're going to have those. There's peaks and troughs to every market. And maybe it pulls back and they open their statement one time and they say, wow, I'm contributing, but I'm not 50,000. Now I'm $45,000. I'm losing money. All right, that's fine. They go on, they open it a couple of months later, and now it's worth, 38,000. The tendency for most people is to pull that money, stop contributing. And many times I see people make the mistake of pulling that money out and putting it in cash. Well, what's happened is one of those biases got us, and you literally just what we call locked in your losses. So you had stocks that you were buying when they were high and you liked them. The market pulled back. You're buying them at a lower cost per share, which over the long run is going to help you. But in the interim, let's say you bought Walmart shares at $100 a share. The market went down and now they're 50. You sold them. So you just did the opposite of what we know to do, which is instead of buying low and selling high, you bought high and sold low, because the market mirrors the opposite of what we see many times. And so people make that mistake so many times, Kevin. It's heartbreaking to see somebody pull out because they locked those losses in, and that's a difficult recovery procedure to get back to. So what we'll be talking about is some of the biases that we deal, some of the things that we can put in place to avoid that, and some of the things that we can do that'll help us to make sure that we make not just good investments, but that we ourselves don't sabotage our own future, because that is very common. Even among millionaires and billionaires and dealing with those portfolios, we see that behavior. So we want people to understand, we want to give them some practical things to do to make sure that they're not sabotaging their future. And so we'll talk about several of those and some investment options too. So I'm really looking forward to being there and talking about this and having some one-on-one conversations, some group conversations with people, so that we can really help them understand this, because it's imperative. It's an imperative part of the investing process that many times we're not even aware of.
Well, Don, thank you so very much. One question I did get from Facebook, I was just sitting here reading it. How does someone get started in investing with no experience whatsoever? Is Cash App a good way, or Robinhood a good way, or should they go with more of the traditional platforms?
Probably one of the most asked questions we get. It's one of my favorite questions, because getting started in this business without a lot of money is difficult, right? That's most of the time people think, when I start making lots of money, then I'm gonna start investing. But that's really a bad mistake, because you're losing the earning power that you could be having during that with smaller investments. So that's a great question. There's no easy answer. I'm not a fan of most of the apps, because they're actually a very limited investments. We don't like what they offer. If nothing else, it's better than nothing. I would rather see somebody do Robinhood. But we actually have built some different things to help people. We like indexes. You'll hear me say that over and over and over, because indexes are, the S&P 500 is an index. There are index companies like Vanguard. Those are very low fee, broad-based investments. They go across all the different stocks that you can get and spread out your risk. Because if we could pick a stock, give me a hot stock, Don, to pick. My answer is always the same, all of them. You can't pick one. That doesn't mean that sometimes we may not like a company and invest a little bit, but when you're investing for your future and you're new and you're getting started, the best way is to get into an index and then just continually fund that. And we'll talk about some specific things, places. We'll have people that can actually help you get started to investing. That's part of what we put in place. So we like indexes, but hopefully these people that are asked questions will be able to make it, because we literally have hands-on people that can help them get invested and start funding their retirement, because the sooner the better.
Well, Don, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to hear everything that you're going to be speaking on at the Wealth Builders Summit coming up October 5th and 6th. Once again, people, if you have not had a chance to register, please click the link in the chat right now so you can be a part of the people that's going to be in that room. If you cannot make it in person, there's also a virtual experience. So at least you can get the information, if nothing else. But please click that link if you're watching on Facebook. Everybody, please share this video with all the people in your life, because everybody needs to hear these conversations. Coming up next, he has managed over $100 million in real estate. He is a very, very successful entrepreneur and also one of the founders of Life Center, Apostle Buddy Crum. You there with
Kevin,
us?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I with you, Kevin? Good.
Yes, yeah.
Good. Well, it's so good to be here, and I'm so excited hearing the different friends that are bringing so much wisdom and advice. You know, life has changed after the pandemic, and I want to talk just briefly, if I can, why we're doing this. And I think giving a thumbnail of my background will also help. But coming out of this pandemic, people have changed their mindset towards business for either a side hustle or how to become a solo entrepreneur or how to wisely any options today. As we're knowing, I mean, there were so many more options than in my day, let's call it. And so what we're trying to do is bring diversity without spending the whole day on any one subject, but giving people a high level view of the multiple choices. Then, as Don has explained, help them to understand which one fits them best. There are a lot of contingency. And as Eric was saying, talking about real estate, Eric has been an individual investor. Darren will be coming on as one of the questions, how do I invest with others? And you will be excited about what he has to say. My point is that when I began, I was a businessman, as you said, an entrepreneur. I loved business. I loved entrepreneurship and had a certain degree of success. I became a consultant to companies that needed capital or wanted to go public. I did work with them. I had been in the investment banking field. I understood how to obtain the capital. But then in the middle of that, and matter of fact, I had 6 clients at the time. God called me and my wife Mary into the ministry. And I was a little surprised, honestly. I was a good lay Christian, and I thought that was my role. But here's what I want to say about that. I saw a lot of wealth in the investment banking business. When I became part of the church, not the body of Christ, I began to say, why don't we have that wealth? Where is it? How can we obtain it? So then I realized that we needed to have people teach us. Now, one of the wonderful things, as I continued on with my business, because I love the business and I love being a pastor and later different titles, but I love being a pastor, but I also wanted to help people obtain wealth. I believe we're supposed to obtain wealth. So we started bringing together people that have the same heart. They want to see people acquire wealth and starting at the smallest level. But to bring experts together, there's something you have to have. All of the people that you're hearing from today started small. They all became very successful. They've got principles that they're willing to share. Secondly, this conference, this summit is very affordable. You know, and I know, Kevin, you're a business person. You usually pay $600, $700, $800 to come hear people with their knowledge. But we don't want to exclude people. We want it to be affordable. We want people to come in with knowledge, that have the right heart, that want to share what they want for the money. I can promise you, they're coming because of their heart. So this is why we're doing this. As I said, 45% of the people in the population States looking for side investments, and then there's active investments collector. But you can become the best stamp collector, and you know how to make money out of it. But then there's also active, like the franchise, and on and on. So in my day, we had an expression. What I'm going to be talking about is how you look under the hood. Now, when I use that expression, that doesn't work for today. Today, I look under the hood. I don't even know what I'm seeing because it's so complex. The computer has changed all of the motor vehicles, but so has the computer changed. Internet has changed how to do that. So I'm going to be talking about all those years of working with successful people and how they became successful. And many of them started off unsuccessful, but became that way. We're going to look under the hood, if you will. We're going to look where you start with self. And as Don had says, be sure we look at the things we can do. Let's look at what works, what doesn't work for the particular person. In other words, let's start with self. What are our gifts, callings, that are needed, and then we'll move into the various areas are where people can invest. And we've covered so much of it in specific.
Dr. Corn, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with your signal. You're kind of coming in and out for us.
But we start with the macro or the high level and come right down to the point of making a decision. And so we're looking forward.
We're having a little bit of trouble with your signal today. I do apologize, but we have some technical difficulties. It's getting
Kevin, is probably not going to get better. You probably need, yeah, I understand. I apologize. Don't you move on to the next speaker, but let me say, these are all highly qualified, integrous men of quality and integrity that desire to make a difference in people's lives, and that's why they're here.
Well, thank you so much. And once again, we definitely look forward to hearing you speak at the Wealth Builder Summit as well.
All right, looking forward to it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We've heard about real estate, we've heard about investing, we've heard about franchising, business, and cryptocurrency. And we got a whole host of more things going on at the Wealth Builder Summit that you definitely want to get involved with. This is a time of generational wealth. It's a time of a lot of people worried about the recession and inflation prices and things like that. And this information is what you can take with you that can help you stave off all those type of things in your life and start to build that wealth that you're looking for. We appreciate everybody for joining us today on this webinar. We will be sending out an email with a lot more information and thanking you guys for joining us. Once again, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email us or you can put some in the chat. But thank you so much. Thank you to our audience at Facebook and all of our speakers today, Don, Oz, Andy, Mike, Eric. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. And we look forward to seeing all you guys at the Wealth Builder Summit. Once again, that's October 5th and 6th. If you can be there in person, I suggest you be there in person. You'll get a chance to speak to these guys one-on-one. Or if you can't, you can join us virtually, but definitely hit that link in the chat and get tickets now because the registration is filling up and we only have room for so many people. So thank you guys so much. And we'll be ending this now.